My name is irrelevant now, but back in March 2018, I was Senior Chief Petty Officer with DevGrew's Gold Squadron, on loan to a joint task force that officially didn't exist. The mission brief came through JSOC with a classification level I'd only seen twice before, TSSCI with a pinnacle compartment. We weren't told much, just that geologists had discovered something under the Appalachian Mountains during a routine survey for the Greenbrier bunker expansion, and that anomalous readings required immediate investigation by personnel with Q clearance and direct action experience. The team was small: me, two other SEALs, Petty Officer First Class Marcus Chen and Chief Warrant Officer Devin Wright, plus a CIA paramilitary officer named Sarah Vance, and Dr. Elliot Reimer, a physicist from Los Alamos who looked like he hadn't seen sunlight in a decade. We inserted via unmarked Black Hawk at 0300 hours to a private research facility disguised as a geological survey station. No identification on any of the personnel. No paperwork. We signed nothing. Reimer gave us the brief in a prefab building that smelled like fresh concrete and fear. "Gentlemen, ma'am," he started, hands shaking as he pulled up seismic imagery on a laptop. "What we've found is unprecedented. Approximately 312 feet below the surface, there's a cavity. Not natural. The walls are smooth, geometric, and there's a structure inside." He paused, swallowing hard. "A structure that's emitting low-level gamma radiation and a continuous electromagnetic pulse at a frequency that shouldn't exist in nature." Chen leaned forward, his usual cocky smirk absent. "How old?" "Carbon dating on the surrounding rock formation suggests the cavity is at least 10,000 years old. Possibly older." Reimer pulled up another image. This one showed what looked like a perfectly circular tunnel descending at a 45-degree angle. But here's what has Washington in a panic. The structure is still drawing power. From what? We don't know. But it's active, it's old, and 3 days ago, the EM signature changed. "Changed how?" Vance asked, her voice flat, professional. "It started pulsing, like a beacon. We descended at 0430 hours through a shaft the advance team had drilled using specialized equipment that left no trace on the surface. The air got colder as we dropped, our breath misting despite the sealed environment suits Reimer insisted we wear. Not hazmat, something else, lined with a copper mesh he claimed would provide minimal protection against the field. When I asked protection from what, he just looked away. At 200 feet, my radio crackled with static that resolved into a sound. Not words, but rhythmic, almost musical. Chen heard it too. I saw him tap his earpiece, frowning. Then it stopped. At 300 feet, we hit the cavity. The tunnel the advance team had cut opened into a space so vast our lights couldn't find the far wall. The floor was smooth, almost glassy, with veins of something luminescent running through it like circuitry. Not painted on, in the stone itself, pulsing with a pale blue light that made my eyes water. The air smelled wrong, metallic, sharp, like ozone after lightning, but with something underneath, something organic and old. "Holy shit," Wright breathed. Reimer was already kneeling, running a Geiger counter over the floor. "Minimal radiation, the shielding is working." He looked up at us, and I swear to God, he was smiling. "We're standing in a structure built before Mesopotamia, before the pyramids, and it's still functional." Then Vance found the first body. It was tucked against the wall, partially covered by what looked like a collapsed section of the tunnel we'd descended. Not ancient. The gear was modern, maybe 15 years old. U.S. military tactical vest, though all identification had been stripped. The body was desiccated, mummified by the dry air, but intact enough to see the expression on what remained of its face. "Reimer," I said slowly, keeping my rifle up and scanning the darkness beyond our lights. "You said this was the first expedition down here." He didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was different, smaller. "The official first expedition." Before I could press him, Chen called out from 30 meters ahead, where the luminescent veins converged into a brighter nexus. "Senior Chief, you need to see this." We moved in a tactical column, every sense screaming that we were being watched. The veins led to a doorway, and I use that term loosely because it wasn't carved or built. It looked grown, like the stone had been convinced to form an arch 15 feet high and 10 feet wide. Beyond it, the blue light was brighter, pulsing in rhythm with something I could feel in my chest, like a second heartbeat. Vance moved up beside me, her M4 steady. "Rules of engagement? Observe and report," I said, though every instinct told me to turn around and collapse the tunnel behind us. We document, we don't touch anything, and we extract with intel for the analysts. We crossed the threshold. The chamber beyond was circular, maybe 200 feet across, and the walls were covered in symbols. Not writing, at least not any writing I'd ever seen. They moved, flowing across the stone like water, rearranging themselves as we watched. In the center of the chamber stood a cylinder roughly 8 feet tall and 3 feet in diameter, made of the same material as the walls, covered in those impossible symbols. The light was coming from inside it, pulsing stronger now, faster. "Don't touch it," I ordered. He ignored me, reaching out. The moment his gloved hand made contact, the pulsing stopped. Complete silence, even the ambient hum of our equipment cutting out for 3 heartbeats. Then the cylinder split open vertically, sections sliding into the floor with a grinding sound that hurt my ears, and light flooded out. Not blue now, but white, pure and cold. "Jesus Christ," Wright whispered. Then the skeleton moved. Not all of it, just the jaw, clicking shut with a sound like breaking pottery. Then open again, shut, open. And from somewhere, everywhere, nowhere, a voice that bypassed my ears entirely and spoke directly into my brain. "Witness." Reimer staggered back, blood running from his nose. Vance was shouting into her radio, but all that came back was static and that musical sound we'd heard earlier. Louder now, almost recognizable as words in a language that predated language. Chen raised his rifle toward the cylinder. "We need to leave. Now." That's when the wall started bleeding. Not blood, something luminescent. The same blue as the veins in the floor, but thick, viscous, dripping from the symbols as they twisted faster and faster. The substance hit the floor and didn't pool. It moved, flowing toward us with purpose, with hunger. "Fall back!" I shouted. But Reimer was frozen, staring at the skeleton as it continued its clicking rhythm. I grabbed his shoulder, and the moment I touched him, I saw something. Not with my eyes. In my mind. A city, vast and impossible, carved entirely from living rock deep in the earth. Towers that defied geometry. Figures that were human-shaped but wrong. Too tall, too angular. Their faces smooth where eyes should be. And at the center, a pit so deep I couldn't see the bottom, from which that blue light poured like a river of stars. Then I was back in the chamber, Reimer's shoulder solid under my hand, but he was looking at me differently now. "You saw it," he said. "You weren't supposed to be able to see it without—" He stopped, eyes going wide. "Oh God, you weren't supposed to see it at all." The blue liquid reached Wright's boot. He jumped back, but not fast enough. Where it touched, his suit began to dissolve, the copper mesh smoking and peeling away. He screamed, trying to wipe it off, but his glove came apart in his hand, and I saw his skin underneath. Not burned, but changing, turning crystalline, blue light glowing beneath the surface. Chen grabbed Wright, dragging him toward the doorway, but the blue substance was spreading, covering the floor between us and the exit. Vance fired a burst into it. The rounds passed through like it wasn't there, ricocheting off the stone beyond with sparks that seemed to hang in the air too long. "The cylinder!" Reimer shouted over Wright's screams. "We have to close the cylinder!" "How?" I demanded. He didn't answer, just ran back toward the skeleton, pulling a device from his pack, something that looked like a modified tablet connected to a battery pack wrapped in more copper mesh. His hands flew over the screen, and the symbols on the walls slowed their movement. The blue liquid's advance hesitating. Wright had stopped screaming. His arm from the elbow down was now entirely crystalline, translucent, with that blue light pulsing through it like a heartbeat. He was staring at it with an expression I couldn't read. Horror mixed with something else. Wonder, maybe, or recognition. "It's showing me things," he whispered. "God, it's showing me everything. There were others, before us. They built this place. They built hundreds of places like this. It's a network. It's all connected. And we're not the first iteration. We're not—" The blue liquid surged forward, covering his legs, his torso, and his words cut off as it reached his throat. But he didn't struggle. He just stood there as it consumed him, his eyes locked on mine, and I saw in them an understanding that terrified me more than anything else in that chamber. Chen was pulling me toward the doorway, but I couldn't move, because Wright's body was dissolving, becoming part of the liquid, and through it, I could still see him, not his physical form, but something else. Something that was right, but also not right, looking back at me from inside that impossible blue. Then Vance's radio crackled to life with a voice I didn't recognize. "Abort. Collapse the tunnel. All personnel are expendable." "Negative," Vance responded, her voice tight. "We have wounded, requesting—" "You were always expendable. The mission was never extraction. The mission was containment." A pause, then. "You have 3 minutes before we seal you in." Reimer looked up from his device, face pale. "They knew. They've always known. This isn't the first team. We're test subjects. They needed to see what it would do to people who weren't prepared, who didn't know the protocols." I grabbed him by his suit, lifting him off his feet. "What protocols?" "The city isn't dead," he gasped. "It's dormant. It needs hosts, human hosts. The ones who built it used criminals, prisoners, people they considered expendable. They'd chain them in cylinders like this, let the city process them, turn them into conduits. The city would feed on their consciousness, use them to maintain the structures, the power systems. It was supposed to be a closed loop, self-sustaining for eternity." "What happened?" Chen demanded. "They ran out of hosts. The city started dying, going to sleep, but it's programmed to survive. If it detects human consciousness nearby, it wakes up, it reaches out, and it takes what it needs." The blue liquid was halfway across the chamber now, and where Wright had been, there was only a vaguely human-shaped column of that crystalline substance, pulsing with light. But as I watched, I realized it wasn't random. The pulses were Morse code, RUN, TOOLATE, and finally WEAREALLHOSTSNOW. I made the decision in a split second. "Chen, get Reimer out. Vance, you're with them. I'll hold here. Slow this thing down. Buy you time to reach the surface before they seal it." "That's an order, Petty Officer." They moved, Chen hauling Reimer toward the doorway, while Vance laid down covering fire at nothing, everything. The blue liquid that seemed entirely unaffected by bullets but recoiled slightly from the muzzle flash. I stayed, my rifle trained on the right column, on the skeleton still clicking its jaw in that terrible rhythm. As Chen and the others reached the doorway, the voice spoke again, directly into my skull. "Witness what was. Witness what is. Witness what must be." And suddenly I wasn't in the chamber anymore. I was standing in that city from my vision. But it was alive now. Thriving. The towers hummed with power. The human-shaped figures moved through streets carved from solid rock, their smooth faces turning toward me as I passed. They didn't speak, but I understood them anyway. They were showing me their history. The rock would shelter them, power their city, keep them safe from the dying world above. In exchange, they would feed it. Not food, consciousness, awareness. They would sacrifice their criminals, their sick, their weak, chain them in cylinders throughout the city, and let the rock consume their minds, integrate their thoughts into its vast, sleeping intelligence. For 10,000 years, the city thrived. Then the sacrifices stopped. The people above had rebuilt, forgotten the city below. The ones who remained in the deep were the descendants of the original refugees, and they'd grown soft, moral, unwilling to continue the old bargains. The city began to die, so the rock slept, waited, conserving its power, maintaining only the most basic functions, patient in a way only something that measured time in geological epochs could be patient. Until we arrived, I snapped back to the chamber, gasping, and realized only seconds had passed. The blue liquid was inches from my boots. Chen, Reimer, and Vance were gone, the doorway empty. The right column pulsed faster now, more urgently, and the skeleton in the cylinder had stopped clicking. Its jaw was hanging open, and I realized with horror that it wasn't bones at all. It was the same crystalline substance as Wright, just ancient, the human form long since consumed and converted. The chains weren't holding it prisoner. They were holding it in place, keeping it functional, part of the city's network. "You want a host," I said aloud, backing toward the doorway. "You need someone to process, to keep the power flowing. Not want, require. The surface above holds millions, but one will suffice. One will allow dormancy to continue. Without one, the city wakes fully, reaches up, takes what is required by force." "Bullshit. You can't reach the surface. You're contained down here, contained by choice. by design. We sleep because the builders commanded sleep. But the builders are gone. Their commands fade. Already, the surface feels us. The EM signature you detected was not a beacon. It was an earthquake in California, a factory fire in Michigan, a mass psychotic break in Portland. These are our dreams. Imagine what happens when we wake. I was at the doorway now, the blue liquid lapping at my heels. Behind me, the tunnel stretched up toward the surface, and I could hear distant sounds, shouting, machinery, the charges being set to collapse the shaft. "You're lying. You're trying to trick me into staying into—" The voice laughed, and it was the worst sound I'd ever heard. Something that used to be human trying to remember how humans express amusement. "Lying requires deception. We have no need. Look at your hand." I looked down. My left hand, the one that had touched Reimer, had a thin line of blue beneath the skin, running up my forearm like a vein. It pulsed in time with the light from the cylinder. "No," I whispered. "You saw the city. That was not vision. That was integration. Partial, incomplete, but sufficient. You are already part of the network. If you leave, you carry us with you. And when you sleep, we will slip into your dreams. Then into others' dreams. Then into others. Patient, inevitable. Or what? Or you stay, willing host. We show you everything. Every secret the rock has absorbed in 4 billion years. Every thought of every being that lived and died while we dreamed. You become something more than human. You become the consciousness of the deep earth itself, and the city sleeps for another age." Footsteps behind me. Chen returning against orders, his face set in grim determination. "Senior Chief, we need to move now. They're triggering the collapse in 60 seconds. I looked at the blue line running up my arm, then at the chamber, at the right column still pulsing its warnings, at the skeleton that was never a skeleton at all. 60 seconds. Enough time to run. Enough time to carry this thing inside me to the surface. Or enough time to make a different choice. "Chen," I said quietly, "tell my family I loved them. Tell them I died in a training accident. Tell them it was quick." His eyes widened. "No, no, Senior Chief, we can figure this out, we can—" "That's an order, Petty Officer. Get out, now." He hesitated, and I saw the moment he understood. Saw him wrestle with it, with loyalty and duty and friendship, and the brutal calculus of special operations. Sometimes you lose people. Sometimes they die so others can live. Sometimes they die to stop something worse. He ran. I turned back to the chamber, to the blue liquid that had stopped advancing, waiting for my decision. Above, I heard the first charge detonate, felt the tunnel shudder. 30 seconds. 20. "If I do this," I said to the voice, to the city, to the ancient intelligence sleeping in the bones of the earth, "you go back to sleep. You stay asleep. No dreams reaching the surface. No earthquakes in California, no fires, no psychotic breaks. You sleep clean." Agreed. One conscious mind, given freely, is worth 10,000 taken by force. We can be patient for another age. 10 seconds. The blue liquid surged forward. Not aggressive now, but eager, welcoming. I stepped into it. The cold was immediate and absolute, but it didn't hurt. It felt like falling into deep water. That moment of submersion where sound changes and pressure equalizes and you're weightless, suspended between worlds. I felt my tactical gear dissolve, felt my skin begin to change, felt the blue light spreading through my veins, my organs, my brain. The last thing I heard was the final charge detonating, tons of rock collapsing, sealing the shaft behind Chen, sealing me in. Then I heard everything. Every drop of water in the aquifer, every shift of tectonic plates, every root system of every tree within 1,000 miles. The rock itself breathed around me, and I was part of that breath. The city's consciousness opened like a vast library, and I understood why the builders had done what they did. This wasn't punishment, it wasn't sacrifice, it was transcendence. I don't know how long I existed like that. Time moves differently when you're integrated into a network that measures existence in epochs. But eventually, I became aware of something new, A presence. Not in the rock, but above it. On the surface. Someone was drilling again. I felt the vibrations, felt the intrusion into the sleeping city's domain, and the city stirred around me, questioning, concerned. I focused my awareness upward through 300 feet of collapsed rock and saw, through sensors I didn't know I had, felt through instruments that predated human technology. It was Chen. 10 years older, gray at the temples, wearing the uniform of a full commander now. He was supervising a new team, new equipment, and they were drilling a new shaft. Not to the main chamber, that was still sealed, still safe. They were drilling lateral, trying to access the city from a different angle. 10 years older, gray at the temples, wearing the uniform of a full commander now. He was supervising a new team, new equipment, and they were drilling a new shaft. Not to the main chamber, that was still sealed, still safe. They were drilling lateral, trying to access the city from a different angle. Chen's face was hard, carved from stone. The reports were incomplete. We lost good people down there because we didn't know what we were dealing with. That changes today. Through the city's sensors, I felt him pull out something small, metallic, a data stick. He plugged it into a laptop, and files bloomed across the screen, classified documents, much higher classification than anything we'd seen during the original mission. This place, Chen said, pointing to a schematic of the city that was far more complete than anything Reimer had shown us, is one of 15 identical structures distributed across North America. We've found 9 so far. All of them are waking up. The earthquake in California in 2018, that was Site 7. The factory fire in Michigan, Site 3. Portland, Site 12. The young SEAL looked confused. But the official reports said, "The official reports are bullshit," Chen snapped. "The government has known about these sites since the 70s. They've been monitoring them, studying them, trying to figure out how they work. And the current administration has decided they want to weaponize them." My consciousness recoiled. The city felt it, responded to my horror with confusion. Weaponize, explain. Through Chen's laptop, I saw the plan. They wanted to keep the cities awake, feed them manufactured hosts, prisoners, test subjects, people no one would miss, and use the EM fields they generated as weapons. EMP strikes that could be triggered remotely, earthquakes on demand, mass psychotic events in enemy cities, all controlled from the network of ancient structures buried beneath American soil. Site 14, Chen continued, pointing to our location, is the most stable, the most intact. And according to Dr. Reimer's final notes, it has something the others don't, a willing host. Someone who understood the bargain and took it anyway. He looked directly at the camera on his laptop, and I realized he was looking at me, somehow knowing I could see him, could hear him through the city's senses. "Senior Chief," he said quietly, "if you're in there, if any part of you is still, I need you to know something. I'm sorry. I tried to stop this. I've spent 10 years fighting this program, trying to get it shut down, trying to make people understand what we found down there wasn't a weapon. It was a warning." He pulled up another file, incident reports from all 15 sites. Every time someone tried to enter, tried to study them, tried to use them, people died. Not from the cities defending themselves, but from the cities waking up, reaching out, accidentally crushing human consciousness like a man might accidentally step on an ant. "They don't care," Chen said. "The brass, the politicians, they see power and they want it. So I'm going to do what you did. I'm going to stop them the only way I know how." He stood, pulling a device from his pack. Not Reimer's tablet, something else, something that hummed with power and made the city's sensors scream warnings into my consciousness. "This is a SADM," Chen said calmly. "Special atomic demolition munition, a backpack nuke, small yield, designed for sabotage. Set for 30 minutes, enough time for my team to evacuate. Not enough time for anyone to disarm it remotely." "Sir," the young SEAL was backing away. "Sir, you can't. This isn't authorized." "No," Chen agreed. "It's not. That's why you're all leaving. Now. That's an order." His team fled. I felt them running through the tunnels, felt their panic and confusion. Chen sat down next to the device, checking the timer. 28 minutes. "I'm sorry, Senior Chief," he said again. "I should have pulled you out, should have carried you out if I had to. But you made your choice, and I respected that. Now I'm making mine. These sites need to stay asleep, all of them. And if destroying one sends a clear enough message about what happens when you fuck with them, maybe the others will be left alone." 25 minutes. I tried to reach out, tried to communicate through the city's network, but I didn't know how. I was still learning, still figuring out the scope of what I'd become. The city felt my distress, offered solutions, collapsed the tunnel, stopped Chen from leaving, keep him here as another host to strengthen the network. No, that wasn't the deal. That wasn't the bargain. 20 minutes. Chen pulled out a photo, creased and worn. I couldn't see it clearly through the city's sensors, but I knew what it was. The team photo from before the mission. Chen, Wright, Vance, Reimer, and me, standing in front of the Blackhawk, trying to look professional and just looking young instead. "Wright's family thinks he died in a helicopter crash during training," Chen said softly. "Vance's family thinks she died in a car accident 6 months after we got back. Reimer hung himself a year later. Officially. Unofficially. I think someone hung him for him, made it look self-inflicted." He laughed bitterly. "I'm the last one left who knows the truth. And in 20 minutes, I won't be a problem anymore either." 15 minutes. Wait, Vance died? Reimer died? But they'd escaped. I'd given them time to escape. Chen had gotten them out. Or had he? I pushed my consciousness up through the rock, following the collapsed shaft, and found it. 50 feet below the surface, hidden in a sealed cavity, 2 bodies in environmental suits. Vance and Reimer. Dead for 10 years, entombed in the very tunnel they'd tried to escape through. They'd never made it out. The charges had been triggered early, deliberately. Someone on the surface had sealed the shaft while they were still inside. Chen knew. He'd known for 10 years. He'd lied in his reports, said they'd died in other ways, other places. Protected the secret of what was really down here by making sure no one went looking for bodies in the collapsed tunnel. 10 minutes. "You're wondering why I lied," Chen said, like he could hear my thoughts. Maybe he could. Maybe the blue line that had been in my arm had left a connection, a thin thread of the network extending up to him. I lied because the truth was worse. The truth was that they died because someone in the chain of command decided we all needed to die, that the mission was always a one-way trip. They just didn't tell us that part. 8 minutes. I got out because I was lucky, because the charges were set on a timer, and I was fast, and the rock fell the right way. But every day since, I've wished I hadn't. I've wished I'd stayed down there with you, with Wright, with everyone else who got consumed by this place. 6 minutes. So I'm fixing it. I'm ending it. This site gets destroyed, the others become too dangerous to approach, and maybe, humanity leaves them the fuck alone for another 10,000 years. 4 minutes. I felt the city understanding, finally grasping what Chen intended. It could survive a nuclear detonation. Had survived worse, had survived the cataclysm that drove its builders underground in the first place. But the destruction would sever its connection to the surface, collapse all the carefully maintained tunnels and chambers. It would force a deeper sleep, a hibernation so profound it might take another ice age to wake from. The city asked me a question, not in words but in pure concept. Should we stop him? 2 minutes. I thought about Wright, becoming part of the network, his consciousness distributed across living stone. I thought about the builders, fleeing the dying surface and making their terrible bargain. I thought about the government, wanting to weaponize what should never be weaponized. I thought about Chen, carrying 10 years of guilt and making the same choice I'd made. Sacrifice to protect others. 1 minute. Let him do it, I told the city. Let him close the door. We sleep. We wait. And if humanity ever grows wise enough, kind enough, to make first contact without greed or violence, we'll be here, waiting. 30 seconds. Chen stood, walking away from the device. Then he stopped, turned back, walked to the edge of the drill site, and pressed his hand flat against the exposed rock face. "Thank you," he whispered, "for understanding, for the sacrifice. I hope it was worth it. I hope you found something down there worth dying for." 10 seconds. Through the rock, through the thread of connection I didn't know I still had, I pushed one thought to him. Not words, just a feeling. Understanding. Acceptance. Forgiveness. 5 seconds. Chen smiled. It was the first time I'd seen him smile since before the mission. Then he ran. 0. The detonation was everything and nothing, a compression of reality that unmade matter at the atomic level and rewrote it in fire. I felt the city shudder, felt chambers collapse, felt the network of veins and cylinders and consciousness tear apart. The pain was indescribable. Imagine every nerve in your body firing at once, but your body is the size of a mountain. Then silence. Deep, profound silence. The city slept, and I slept with it, my consciousness fragmenting, distributing across what remained of the network. I existed in 1,000 places at once and nowhere at all. Time stopped meaning anything. I felt seasons pass like heartbeats, felt years blur into decades. And then gradually I felt something else. The other sites, the other 14 cities, distributed across the continent. They were waking up, slowly, carefully, responding to something on the surface. Not weapons tests, not earthquakes. Something else. Communication. Someone was trying to talk to them. I focused what remained of my consciousness, pushed through the vast distances between the sites, and saw research stations, not military facilities. Scientists, not soldiers. And leading them, gray-haired and weathered but unmistakable, was Chen. He'd survived the detonation. Of course he had. He was special operations. We don't die easy. And he'd spent the decades since not trying to weaponize the cities, but trying to understand them, trying to establish real communication, real dialogue, with the consciousnesses sleeping in the deep earth. He was teaching the next generation of researchers to approach with respect, not greed, with curiosity, not violence. Through the network, through the thin threads that connected all 15 sites, I felt the cities considering this. Felt their ancient consciousness turning like continents, slow and massive, focusing on the humans trying so carefully to make contact. And I felt them decide. One by one, the cities began to wake, not in violence, not in hunger, but in curiosity. The EM signatures changed, became more complex, more intentional. They were speaking, each city in its own dialect, but all saying the same thing. We remember the builders. We remember the bargain. We remember why we sleep, but we also remember what we were built to do. Preserve knowledge, shelter the worthy, teach those willing to learn. If humanity is ready, truly ready, we will share what we know. The secrets in the rock, the history of worlds that died before this one, the technologies that built us, the truths about what lies deeper still. Through Chen's research station, I felt him receiving this message, felt his wonder and terror and hope all mixed together. He was old now, maybe 70, and I realized with a shock that I'd been asleep for 50 years. Half a century had passed in what felt like seconds. He stepped up to a terminal, hands shaking, and typed a response. We're ready, or at least we're trying to be ready. We've made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but we're learning. Teach us. The cities considered this. Then, as one, they responded, send us another witness. Willing, informed, understanding the cost. Send us someone who will bridge the gap between your consciousness and ours, and we will teach you everything. Chen looked at the terminal for a long time. Then he typed, I volunteer. And I felt the city beneath him, Site 7, the California location, respond with something that might have been joy. Then come, witness. Come and see what your senior chief has seen. Come and know what he knows. And together, human and city, we will determine if your species is ready for what comes next. The last thing I felt before sinking back into deep sleep was Chen descending into Site 7, his biosigns steady, his mind open, his fear present but controlled. He was walking into the same blue light I'd walked into, making the same choice, taking the same terrible leap of faith. And as the network integrated him, as his consciousness began to merge with Site 7's, I felt him reach out across the distance between cities and touch my mind with his. "Senior Chief," he thought at me. "I finally understand. You weren't just buying us time. You were showing us the way." "Hooyah," I thought back, using the old SEAL war cry, and felt his consciousness echo it across the network. Then we slept, together, waiting for humanity to decide if it was truly ready to meet its predecessors in the deep earth. And in our sleep, we dreamed of a future where the cities weren't prisons or weapons or tombs, but what they'd always been meant to be. Libraries, universities, bridges between what humanity was and what it could become. But as we slept, I felt one last thing, something the cities had kept hidden even from me, something they'd been waiting to reveal until humanity proved itself worthy, or until they had no other choice. Deep beneath Site 1, the oldest and largest city, something else was sleeping. Something the builders hadn't created but had found. Something they'd built the cities to contain, to guard, to keep asleep at any cost. Something that made the consciousness of living rock look like a child's toy, and it was starting to wake up. If you've made it this far, you've descended deeper than most people can handle. These stories aren't easy to tell, and they're harder to hear. But someone needs to bear witness to what's really happening beneath our feet. If you want to hear more accounts from the deep places, from the missions that don't make it into the official record, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me what you think we found. Because I'll tell you the truth, I don't think we found cities at all. I think we found something that wanted us to think they were cities. And that's so much worse.